Welcome everyone. In this lesson, we are going to talk about the organic certification process. What is it, how it works, and why it is so important in modern agriculture. So, when we see a product labeled as organic, we often think of something natural, healthy, and sustainable. But how can we be sure that it is truly follows these principles? That's exactly what organic certification is about. It's the system that guarantees that farmers and producers respect specific standards from the field all the way to the consumer's table. So, in the next few minutes, we will explore what organic certification means, which rule it follows, and how it helps protect the environment, animal welfare, and human health. When we talk about organic certification, we refer for a formal control system designed to ensure that a product truly complies with the rules of organic farming. In the European Union, these rules are established by Regulation 2018 number 848, which define the principles, production requirements, and control procedures for all organic operators. As I said in the previous lessons, for example, the regulation prohibits the use of GMOs, ionizing radiation, and growth hormones. The use of antibiotics is allowed only when strictly necessary for animals' health and under conditions that ensure long withdrawal periods and animal welfare. Regarding synthetic pesticides and chemical fertilizers are generally not allowed. However, the regulation provides a specific list of permitted substances, such as certain low-risk plant protection products and fertilizers of natural origin, which can be used under control conditions. The purpose of this system is to protect the environment, ensure high standards of animal welfare, and promote soil and ecosystem health and safeguard human health. The regulation applies to the entire supply chain production, processing, distribution, and trade. And so only operators who comply with all the requirements may use the EU organic logo on their products. It is also important to note that not every country applies the same rules. Within the European Union, all member states following Regulation 848, but other regions have different frameworks, such as NOP in the United States, JAS in Japan, or national organic standards in countries like Switzerland or Turkey. In countries without a national organic law, private certification bodies may develop their own standard, as happens in Australia and New Zealand. Organic certification builds trust between producers and consumers, ensuring that products labeled as organic truly respect the principles and requirements defined by the applicable standards. Now let's take a look at how organic certification actually works. There are different systems in the world that aims to guarantee whether a product is truly organic. However, within the European Union, only one system is officially recognized for products sold as organic: third party certification. The first and EU recognized system is third party certification. In this model, an independent and accredited certification body performs inspections and audits to verify that all production rules are respected. Inspection visit farms and processing facilities, check documents and records, interview operators, and may collect samples for laboratory analysis. If the operator complies with the requirements of regulation, the certification body issues an organic certificate. This certificate remains valid as long as the operator continues to comply and undergoes the mandatory annual inspection. It is not issued for a fixed number of years. Certification has a cost, which generally depends on the time required for inspections, the complexity of the operation, and travel expenses. This system is typically used in longer supply chains and is essential for products intended for export or interregional trade. The second system, used mainly outside the EU, is the participatory guarantee system. It's based on peer reviews where farmers, consumers, and the local communities collaborate to assess compliance. It is usually applied in local markets and short supply chains as it is low cost and community based. However, it is important to note that participatory guarantee system certification is not recognized under EU law. Therefore, products certified through PGS cannot use the EU organic logo and cannot be marketed as organic within the European Union unless they undergo third party certification. Now that we know the European Union only recognizes third-party certification, let's see how this process actually takes place. When a farm or company apply for the EU organic certificates, the certification body follows a structured control procedure to verify compliance with the Regulation 848. This process usually begins with a review of the operator's documentation and records, such as production plans, inputs list, field logs, and traceability procedures. These documents allow inspectors to understand how organic principles are applied in practice. Then the inspectors carry out on-site interviews with staff and operators to verify that the documented procedures are actually implemented. A physical inspection on the farms or facilities is also performed. During the visits, inspectors check fields, buildings, storage areas, equipment, and traceability systems. Sometimes products or soil sample may be taken for laboratory analysis when necessary. At the end of the inspection, the auditor prepares a report that describes the findings and lists any identified non-conformities. Then, if the operator meets all requirements, the certification body issues an organic certificate. The certificate does not have a fixed duration. It remains valid as long as the operator stays compliant and undergoes the mandatory annual inspection. This rigorous process ensures that the EU organic logo is not just a label, but a real but guarantee transparency, compliance, and trust for consumers. Before launching the organic certification process, it is essential to take some strategic decisions. This phase is not only about preparing documents, it is about understanding when certification makes sense and what organizational condition must be in place. First, it is important to think in terms of the value chain. Organic certification requires time, financial resources, and solid organization, and it is most effective when it is embedded in our broader strategies to strengthen the entire sector, from production to processing and marketing. In other words, certification should not be considered as an isolated administrative step, but a strategic investment. A second key point concerns the level of organization of the producer group or producer organization, PO. Any PO wishing to apply for organic certification must have a recognized level status and clear decision-making structures. If the group is intends to be certified as a group of operators under Article 36 of Regulation 848, when a specific rule applies, the group may include up to 2,000 members and must operate through an internal control system that ensures internal monitoring and compliance. This limit does not apply to cooperative and or producer organization In general, it is relevant only when they choose the organic group certification model. For larger organizations, for example, cooperatives with several thousand members, may still participate in organic certification, but they must do so through appropriate legal units or subgroups that can be effectively controlled. For certification to be sustainable in the long term, the organization must also have active governance structures, qualified staff, clear internal communication channels, and services that support members' compliance and development. To support this process, several diagnostic and training tools can be used. For instance, the IRI diagnostic assessment, the institutional capacity of producer groups across different dimensions, while the capacity building program helps strengthen organizational skills through targeted trainings. So overall, this preparatory stage is about ensuring that the organization is structured, ready, and capable of maintaining organic certification over time. Once the organization is ready, the next step is to assess technical feasibility. In other words, whether the production areas can meet the requirements of organic farming in practice. This involves verifying that every plot proposed for certification is free from contamination. Each plot must be accessible, appropriately managed, and must have undergone a conversion period during which no prohibited inputs have been used. Normally, a minimum of 2 years before sowing annual crops and 3 years before harvesting perennial crops. Plots must also be mapped or georeferenced with clear boundaries and adequate buffer zones to prevent contamination from neighboring areas, whether where non-authorized products may be used. Examples include leaving an untreated perimeter strip in perennial crops such as cashew orchards, or clearly making certified trees in sea parts. It is important to clarify that the presence of conventional crops near organic plots is allowed, provided that the operator implements effective measures to prevent contamination. For instance, maintaining buffer zones, adapting spray equipment in neighboring fields, and ensuring strong traceability and separation of organic and inorganic products. What is it is not permitted is the mixing of production systems in ways that compromise integrity. Organic products and conventional products must remain clearly separated in field operations, storage, equipment use, and documentation. Finally, transitioning to organic farming often requires adopting agroecological practice since synthetic plants protection products are generally prohibited. Farmers rely on tools such as crop rotation, biological pest control, soil fertility management, and preventive strategies to maintain productivity. So this stage is therefore about much more than formal compliance. It represents a shift towards more sustainable, resilient, and environmentally responsible farming systems. Now let's talk about the labeling rules for organic products in the European Union. All of these requirements come from Regulation 848 in 2018, and its delegated acts which establish a harmonized framework for how organic products must be identified and placed on the market across member states. First of all, every prepackaged organic products must display the EU organic logo, the green leaf composed of white stars. This logo indicates that the product has been produced and controlled in accordance with the EU organic rules and has passed the required certification process. Next to the logo, the label must show the code number of the control body, such as ITBIO006. This code identifies which certification body performs the inspection and issues the certificate. The label must also indicate the origin of the agricultural raw materials using one of the official phrases EU agriculture when all ingredients come from the European Union, non-EU agriculture when they come from outside the EU, or EU slash non-EU agriculture for mixed sourcing. This indicator also refers specifically to the agricultural ingredients not to be placed or processing or packaging. Together, these labeling elements ensure transparency, traceability, and uniformity, allowing consumers anywhere in the EU to clearly recognize and trust organic products. Let's now look at the control bodies and the competent authorities that makes the organic certification system work in practice. Control bodies are independent organizations, private or public, that are accredited, meaning that they meet the international requirements for impartiality, competence, and consistency in certification activities. In the European Union, these control bodies must also be authorized and supervised by the competent authorities of each member state. Competent authorities regularly monitor their performance to ensure that inspections and certification are carried out correctly. So the main tasks include conducting the mandatory annual inspection for each operator, reviewing all documentation and records, performing additional announced and risk-based inspections, verifying traceability and mass balance, ensuring that organic products can be followed from farm to final consumer, and identifying and reporting any non-compliance and imposing corrective and or reinforced measures when necessary. Finally, the EU Organic Action Plan 2021-2027, the European Union is promoting initiatives to simplify certification procedures, improve the use of digital tools, and also facilitate the uptake of group certification to reduce costs and administrative burdens. To conclude this lesson, let's take a look at some of the main challenges and future trends in organic certification. Even though the organic sector continues to grow, certification can still be complex and relatively costly, especially for small producers. The administrative burdens, record keeping, documentation, and audits is often one of the main barriers to entering the system. For this reason, one of the key objectives for the coming years, as highlighted in the EU Organic Action Plan 2021-2027, is to simplify procedures and make certification more accessible and cost effective. At the same time, new digital tools are emerging to support transparency and efficiency. Technologies such as blockchain-based traceability platforms, digital certificates, and integrated farm management systems can reduce fraud, straighten control processes, and lower administrative work for both farmers and certification bodies. We are also seeing wider adoption of, of group certification, which can significantly reduce the cost for smallholders, as well as the introduction of remote audit techniques where appropriate, especially for document checks and low risk operation, always under conditions defined by the control authorities. Another important trend is the growing interaction between organic certification and other voluntary sustainability standards, such as fair trade, regenerative agriculture, or carbon-free related schemes. So while these systems are separated from EU organic regulation, they increasingly coexist and can complement each other to support more holistic sustainability strategies. Finally, under the European Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy, the EU has set an ambitious goal. By 2030, at least 25% of the EU agricultural land should be managed organically. So this objective means the certification system will continue to evolve, becoming more digital, more inclusive, and more interconnected with broader sustainability and climate-related initiatives. Thank you for your attention and see you in the next lesson.